I don't pick up hitchhikers. It's not that I'm a bad person, just cautious. I drive long, lonely highways for work, and I've heard enough horror stories to know better. Strangers on the road always have a story. The kind you don't want to get involved in. But that night was different. It was late, too late to be out driving through the middle of nowhere. I was somewhere along an empty stretch of highway between Amarillo and the Oklahoma border. The road was endless, swallowed by the dark, with only the distant hum of my tires and the faint crackle of an AM radio station to keep me company. Then I saw him. At first, I thought it was a mile marker. Or maybe a signpost. But as I got closer, I realized it was a man. Just standing there. He didn't move, didn't shuffle forward or wave. He just stood at the edge of the road, one hand in his pocket, the other raised with a slow, deliberate thumbs up. Something about him unsettled me. Most hitchhikers look tired, desperate, waving their arms like their life depends on it. This man wasn't like that. He was still, like he'd been waiting. I should have kept driving. But something in me, curiosity, pity, or maybe something else, made me slow down. I pulled up beside him and lowered my window just an inch. The dim glow of my headlights cast a shadow over his face, but I could make out the details: thin, hollow cheeks, a dark jacket zipped up to his throat, jeans covered in dust. "You okay?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. The man nodded. "Yeah. Just need a lift. The next stop's fine." His voice was smooth, calm. No urgency. No pleading. I hesitated, glancing at the empty road ahead. "Where are you headed?" "Anywhere's fine," he said with a faint smile. That should have been my sign to leave. But against every instinct, I unlocked the door. "Hop in," I said. The man slid into the passenger seat, shutting the door with a quiet click. He placed a small, tattered notebook on his lap, fingers tapping absently on the cover. "Appreciate it," he murmured. "Not a lot of kind souls left these days." I forced a tight smile and pulled back onto the highway, feeling an immediate sense of regret settle into my stomach. The silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. Then, finally, he spoke. "You drive this road often?" "Not really," I said. "Just passing through." He nodded, as if he already knew the answer. We fell into silence again, the hum of the tires the only sound filling the car. The further we drove, the more I regretted stopping. Something about him felt off. Then he spoke again. This time, his voice was softer, almost amused. "You always pick up strangers?" "No," I admitted. "Not usually." He smiled faintly, his fingers still resting on that notebook. "Guess it was just meant to be, then." My hands tightened on the wheel. "Meant to be?" I echoed. He exhaled, shaking his head. "Just a feeling." Another stretch of silence. Then, without turning his head, the man spoke again. "You don't remember, do you?" I frowned. "Remember what?" He let out a slow breath, his fingers tracing the edges of the notebook. "This road. This night. Me." A chill ran down my spine. I glanced at him sharply, but he just stared out the windshield, his expression unreadable. Something about the way he said it, like he wasn't just making conversation, but reminding me, made my skin prickle. I checked the GPS. Next stop, 10 miles. 10 miles until I could drop him off. 10 miles until I could put this whole strange encounter behind me. But something deep in my gut told me it wouldn't be that easy. The only sound in the car was the low hum of the tires against the road. The hitchhiker sat perfectly still, his posture relaxed, fingers idly tapping against the tattered notebook on his lap. I stole a quick glance at it. The cover was worn, cracked at the edges, like it had been carried for years. There was no title, no indication of what was inside. "You curious?" the man asked suddenly. I flinched. His voice was calm, almost amused, like he had been waiting for me to ask. I forced a dry chuckle, keeping my eyes locked on the road. Not really. He hummed. That's a shame. Something about the way he said it sent a chill down my spine. I checked the GPS 7 miles to the next stop. Where are you from? I asked, just to fill the silence. His lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. I used to be from here. That didn't make sense. What do you mean? He ran a hand over the cover of his notebook, thumb tracing the edges. This road, he murmured. You've been down it before. I frowned. No, I haven't. First time taking this route. He shook his head slowly. No, not the first time. A slow chill settled in my stomach. I had never been here before. I was sure of it. But the way he said it, like he knew something I didn't, made doubt creep into my mind. You always this cryptic? I asked, forcing a laugh. He smirked. Only with people who've forgotten. I didn't respond. I pressed my foot against the gas a little harder. 5 miles to go. Then he did something that made my breath catch. He flipped open the notebook. The pages were yellowed, filled with jagged handwriting, words scrawled hastily, notes written in the margins. It looked like a journal. He turned a few pages, eyes skimming over the words before he spoke again. You ever think about the people you've forgotten? His voice was softer now, like he was choosing his words carefully. I swallowed. Not really. He nodded. I figured. Something about that response made me uneasy. He flipped another page. His eyes scanned it, and for the first time, his expression changed. The easy amusement was gone, replaced by something darker. He sighed. I was hoping this time would be different. I frowned. What? He tapped a finger against the page. Then, slowly, he turned the notebook toward me. My stomach dropped. The words written on the page were in my own handwriting. March 14th, I was here before. I don't remember, but I know it's true. The man, he was in my car. He said I wouldn't remember. That I never do. But I need to. I need to remember what happened last time. My fingers clenched around the steering wheel. What the hell is this? I whispered. He didn't answer. The headlights flickered. For a fraction of a second, the road ahead blinked out of existence. The car went dark. My breath caught in my throat as I slammed the brakes. The world flickered back into view. The tires screeched against the asphalt. The car rocked slightly before settling. I gasped, heart hammering against my ribs. Then I turned to the passenger seat. It was empty. The man was gone. The door was still shut. The seatbelt was still fastened. But he was gone. I sat there, gripping the wheel, my breath coming in short, ragged bursts. Then I noticed something on the seat beside me. The notebook. Still open to the page with my handwriting. And beneath my original entry, words that hadn't been there before. You will forget. You always do. But don't worry. I'll see you next time. I sat frozen, my breath coming in short, ragged bursts. The seat beside me was empty. He was gone. But the notebook remained. It sat open, right where he had been sitting, the last words scrawled in jagged ink. You will forget. You always do. But don't worry. I'll see you next time. A shiver crept up my spine. I reached out with trembling fingers and slammed the notebook shut, my pulse hammering in my ears. What the hell just happened? I forced myself to look around, scanning the dark, empty road outside my car. No sign of him. No footprints, no shadow, no movement. Just nothing. I checked the time on my dashboard. 12:03 a.m. I put the car back in drive, pressing my foot against the gas. I didn't want to sit here any longer. The wheels rolled forward, the tension in my chest easing slightly as I distanced myself from whatever had just happened. Then I checked my rearview mirror. And my stomach dropped. Headlights. A pair of bright, glaring beams had appeared behind me. I squinted, trying to make out the shape of the car. But there was nothing but light, too bright, too unnatural. My first thought was that someone had pulled up behind me. Maybe another driver, maybe a cop. But then I realized there hadn't been any cars for miles, and I hadn't heard an engine. I swallowed hard and pressed my foot down harder on the gas. The road stretched ahead, empty and silent. But the headlights behind me stayed in my mirror. Not getting closer. Not falling behind. Just there. Like they were watching. I flicked my turn signal and veered slightly into the next lane. The lights followed. My hands tightened on the wheel. "Come on," I muttered, glancing back again. Something felt wrong. I reached for my phone to check for service. Nothing. No bars. No signal. I flicked the headlights onto high beam, hoping to catch a better glimpse of the car behind me. But the moment I did, the lights in my mirror flickered. Not like normal headlights. Like eyes blinking. A shudder ran through me. I blinked, gripping the wheel. That didn't make sense. I was tired, probably just seeing things. Then the lights got closer. Too fast. I barely had time to react before the brightness filled my car, flooding the interior like a blinding spotlight. My vision swam. I couldn't see the road anymore, just a wall of searing white light swallowing everything around me. The sound of my own breathing filled my ears, fast and shallow. I tried to slow the car down, but the second I reached for the brakes, everything went black. The darkness was absolute. 1 second, I had been speeding down the highway, blinded by impossible headlights. The next, nothing. No road. No car. No sound. Just a suffocating void. I gripped the wheel, but it felt wrong. Like it wasn't even there. Like I was floating in empty space, my body weightless, detached. I swallowed hard, my pulse thundering in my ears. "Hello?" My voice sounded muffled, like I was speaking underwater. No answer. Then, suddenly, the lights returned. Not behind me. In front of me. Two bright, glowing orbs piercing through the blackness. They weren't headlights. They were something else. Watching me. A sharp pressure filled my chest, like unseen hands pressing down, squeezing the air from my lungs. Then I heard it. A voice. Soft. Familiar. "You remember now, don't you?" I gasped, forcing myself to move. My fingers twitched, reaching for the ignition, but my car wasn't there anymore. I was standing. Somehow, I was standing in the middle of the road, the cold asphalt beneath my feet. My car was gone. I spun around, disoriented, searching for anything familiar. And that's when I saw it. A figure standing a few yards away. The same man. The hitchhiker. He stood perfectly still, hands at his sides, his expression unreadable. The glowing orbs, the eyes, burned behind him, casting long, unnatural shadows across the pavement. "You always come back," he murmured. My breath hitched. "What?" He took a slow step forward. "Every time, you forget. And every time, we end up right here." I took a shaky step back. "What are you talking about?" He sighed, tilting his head slightly, studying me like a puzzle he had solved 1,000 times before. "You don't remember me, do you?" I shook my head, heart pounding. "No." Another slow step forward. "You should." The air around me felt wrong, too heavy, too thick, pressing down on my skin. My head throbbed, flashes of something just out of reach flickering in my mind. Then, the man reached into his jacket. I tensed. He pulled something out. The notebook. The same tattered book that had been left in my car. My throat went dry. "Read it," he said, his voice low. I didn't move. He stepped closer, holding the notebook out toward me. "Read it." A tremor ran through me. My hands twitched at my sides. I didn't want to. I knew I didn't want to. But something in me, something buried deep, knew I had to. I reached for it, fingers brushing against the worn leather cover. The second I touched it, a memory hit me like a sledgehammer. The second my fingers touched the notebook, the world lurched. A sharp pain tore through my skull, like something had been locked away in my brain, and now, all at once, it was breaking free. Memories. Fragments of something I should have known. Something I had forgotten. I stumbled backward, the notebook slipping from my grasp. My breath hitched as flashes of another night, another version of this same road, flooded my mind. The same man sitting in my passenger seat. The same eerie conversation. The same road stretching endlessly before me. And then, an accident. A crash. The sound of tires screeching. Metal twisting. A sharp, suffocating impact. I gasped, my knees buckling as I collapsed onto the cold asphalt. My head was spinning, the weight of something horrible pressing down on me. The hitchhiker, the man, watched me, his expression unreadable. "You remember now," he said softly. I squeezed my eyes shut. "No," I whispered. "That never happened." But the memories kept coming. Me, driving down this road. A storm. Rain hammering against the windshield. And then, him. Standing on the side of the road. Just like tonight. Only this time, when I stopped, something went wrong. I turned too sharply. The tires lost traction. My car spun. And then, impact. A body tumbling across the pavement. Blood. And then, darkness. I clutched my head, my breathing ragged. "No," I choked out. "That's not." "You left me here," the man said. His voice wasn't angry. It wasn't even accusing. Just sad. "You hit me. And you left." I stared at him, my stomach twisting. "No," I croaked. "That's not true." But it was. I saw it now. The way my hands had gripped the wheel that night. The way my breath had shuddered in my chest as I saw his crumpled body in the rearview mirror. And then, the decision. I hadn't called for help. I had driven away. I had left him here. And somehow, I had forgotten. I looked up at him now, my pulse pounding. My vision blurred with something I refused to call guilt. "You died," I whispered. The hitchhiker, the man I had killed, nodded. "And yet," he murmured, "you're still here." "And so am I." A heavy silence settled between us. I swallowed hard, my mind spinning. "How?" I asked. The man tilted his head slightly. "Because you never leave this road." My breath hitched. "You always come back," he continued. "You always forget. But then, eventually," he gestured to the notebook at my feet. "You remember." I stared at the book, my heart hammering. My own words were inside that notebook. I had written in it before. Many times. Because this wasn't the first time this had happened. I wasn't just remembering the night of the accident. I was remembering every other time I had come down this road, picked up this same hitchhiker, relived this same conversation. Over. And over. And over. Like I was trapped. I stumbled to my feet, my body cold with a fear that ran deeper than anything I had ever felt before. "This isn't real," I whispered. "It's just a bad dream. A hallucination." The hitchhiker took a slow step toward me. "If it's a dream," he murmured, "why do you keep waking up here?" I took a shaky step back. The headlights behind him, asterisk asterisk, the glowing eyes in the darkness, asterisk asterisk, seemed to pulse, watching me. I knew what was coming next. It had happened before. Every time I remembered, the same thing happened. The headlights would rush toward me. The world would go black. And I would wake up at the start of the drive. with no memory of anything. No memory of him. Until I stopped for the hitchhiker. Until it started all over again. I sucked in a sharp breath, my hands trembling. "But if I remember," I said, my voice hoarse. "If I remember this time." The hitchhiker gave me a long, unreadable look. Then he nodded. "This time, you might finally leave." The wind howled across the empty road. The air felt heavy, thick with something unseen pressing against my skin. I stood there, staring at the man, the hitchhiker I had killed, as his words settled deep into my bones. "This time, you might finally leave." I clenched my fists. "Ow!" The man tilted his head slightly, watching me. "You already know the answer." I swallowed hard, my pulse hammering. The notebook lay at my feet, the leather cover worn from all the times I had been here before. This endless loop. This road. This wasn't the first time I had remembered. But every time I did, I ended up back behind the wheel, starting the drive all over again. Because I had never done the one thing that could break the cycle. I had never faced what I had done. I had never stayed. The hitchhiker's eyes were steady. "You always run. You always leave. That's why you keep coming back." My breath was uneven. "You have to face it," he said. "You have to finish what you started that night." I shook my head, backing away. "No. I can't." The headlights behind him flickered. The glowing orbs pulsed, closer now. The loop was closing in. I knew what was coming next. The lights would rush toward me. The world would go black. And I would wake up behind the wheel again, forgetting everything. Unless I made a different choice. I looked at the notebook. At my own handwriting, scrawled in frantic desperation. "I need to remember." I sucked in a sharp breath. Then, slowly, I turned back toward the hitchhiker. For the first time since this all started, I didn't run. I stepped forward. He watched me, his face unreadable. But something in his expression softened. "I'm sorry," I whispered. The headlights flickered again. But this time, they didn't move forward. The pulsing glow dimmed, shrinking away from the road. A shift rippled through the air, like a weight had been lifted. I inhaled sharply. The air felt lighter. The hitchhiker nodded once. Then, slowly, he faded. His form dissolved into the night, vanishing like mist in the wind. The notebook at my feet disintegrated. And the road ahead of me, for the first time in what felt like forever, was clear. No headlights. No pulsing eyes in the dark. Just a long, open highway. Waiting. I took a shaky breath. Then, for the first time since that night, since the real night of the accident, I walked forward. Not away. Not back to my car. Forward. Towards something new. I don't remember falling asleep. But when I woke up, I was home. My real home. For the first time in years, I wasn't on that road. I wasn't in that loop. I sat up in bed, my breath coming out in slow, careful exhales. Had it really happened? I turned, glancing toward my nightstand. And my stomach twisted. Sitting there, untouched, was a small, tattered notebook. My breath hitched. I reached for it with trembling fingers, flipping it open. All the pages were blank. Except for one. Scrawled in messy handwriting, not mine, were 3 simple words. "See you soon." A shudder ran through me. I snapped the notebook shut. And from somewhere outside my window, a car horn echoed in the night. If you like this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel and click on the bell to listen to new stories from Mr. Fear every day. Thank you for watching.